Besties, today's story, it's one of those stories that still makes my heart race a little when I think about it. And I'm not even exaggerating, because when I think about it, even now, as an adult, I realize how close I was to completely disappearing, like vanishing from my family forever. You probably wouldn't be listening to me right now, and yes, I'm laughing now, but that day, I almost became a missing person poster. And the crazy part? It all started as a normal, peaceful day. Now, before I tell you what happened, let me tell you something about myself that you need to understand first. I have a very dangerous gift. I remember everything. I have always had a very unusual memory. And when I say unusual, I don't mean, oh, I remember birthdays and songs. No, I mean I remember everything. Details, conversations, places, even the way people were standing, even the tone of their voice. I mean, details that nobody asked for. When I was a child, this was not always a good thing. In fact, it got people in trouble, especially my aunties. Because whenever they took me somewhere, the moment we got back home, my mom would casually ask, "So, where did you go?" And that's when I would begin. Not summarizing, not shortening. No, I would give a full report. From the moment we stepped out of the house to the exact second we came back. Full documentary. We passed a woman with tomatoes. Auntie spoke to a man. They laughed. They stood there for a long. And my aunties, standing there behind me like, why is this child like this? Some of them even started avoiding going out with me. Others tried to train me. They would say, "Okay, when we get home, don't talk too much, okay?" And I would say, "Okay." Then we get home, my mom asks one question, and I forget every instruction I was given. I just talk. Everything comes out. Unfiltered, unedited, unnecessary details included. Looking back now, it's funny. But at that time, I didn't understand why people were stressed around me. I was just telling the truth. And maybe, just maybe, that same habit of noticing everything and reacting quickly is what saved my life that day. Because this story is not something I forgot. It is one of those memories that stayed very clear in my mind. Not just because it was scary, but because it changed how I saw the world, forever. I was 6 years old, still very young and innocent, still trusting. At that time, my mom had just given birth to my baby sister, and our house was full, always full. My mom loved visitors, and I mean loved. There was never a quiet day in our home. People were always coming in and going out. Some were relatives, some were friends, some were neighbors, some were people I didn't even know, but they still sat in our living room like they belonged there. And because of that environment, I grew up believing something very simple. If an adult is smiling at you, they must know my parents. So I called everyone uncle and auntie, without questioning, without thinking twice, without fear. But outside our home, something very different was happening, something dark. Children were disappearing. One day they were there, playing, laughing, living their normal lives. The next day, gone. No explanation, no trace, no goodbye. I remember one of the kids from our neighborhood. She disappeared, just like that. Her parents searched for her everywhere. They didn't sleep. They didn't rest. They didn't stop looking. But they never found her. Even the police eventually stopped searching. That kind of pain, it changes a family forever. And the stories we heard, they were terrifying. People whispered about witchcraft, rituals, sacrifices, people using children to gain power and money. Whether all of it was true or not, as a child, you don't question. You just become afraid. And my mom? She made sure I was afraid. She would say things like, "If they catch you, they will skin you alive." Imagine hearing that at 6 years old. From that moment, going outside alone was not even something I could consider. I stayed inside. I played inside. I lived inside. Until that one day when everything changed. One of our relatives came to visit, an auntie. She came early in the morning to see the new baby, and as usual, she stayed the entire day, talking, laughing, catching up with my mom. She was actually waiting for my father to come home because they hadn't seen each other in a long time. But that day, my father came home a bit late, so eventually, she decided to leave. Now here is where culture entered the situation. Where I come from, you don't just tell your guest bye at the gate. No, you escort them. You walk them. You make sure they are safe. And in this case, my auntie came using public transport, and the bus stop was not that close. It was about a 15-minute walk. My mom couldn't go. She had just given birth. Our 2 housemaids, they were all new. They didn't know the area. So, guess who knew the way? Me. A 6-year-old child became the official guide. My mom said I should go with one of the maids and escort Auntie, then guide the maid back home. And me? I felt important, responsible, proud. I remember thinking, wow, they trust me. So we started walking, and I was in front, leading, even though my auntie already knew the way. But I just had to prove myself. That day, I was wearing my favorite dress. It was red. I loved that dress so much. It made me feel pretty, special, happy. If only I knew, that dress would almost become the last thing I wore outside my house. As we were walking, a white car approached. It slowed down and stopped near us. Inside, there was a man driving and a woman sitting next to him. The man looked at me, not at anyone else, just me, and started talking. And that moment changed everything. The car stopped right next to us, and at first, nothing felt strange, nothing felt dangerous. It just looked like another normal interaction. The man leaned slightly toward the window and looked directly at me. And then he smiled. "Hello, how are you?" His voice was calm, friendly, the kind of voice that makes you feel safe without even thinking. And then he said something that immediately made me trust him. "How is your mother and your father?" That's all it took, because in my small 6-year-old mind, there was only one explanation. He must know my parents, and if he knows my parents, then he is not a stranger. So I smiled back, excited and confident. "Hello, Uncle. They are fine." Even now, when I think about that moment, I realize how easy it is to gain a child's trust. Just one familiar question. Just one smile. And suddenly, you are no longer a stranger. He continued talking to me, as if we had known each other for years. He asked if my father was home, and without hesitation, without caution, without even thinking, I answered him. "No, he is not home yet. Just like that, information given, freely. Meanwhile, my aunt and the maid were standing right beside me, but because of how comfortable I sounded, because of how naturally I was talking to him, they didn't interrupt. They assumed I knew him. For Christ's sake, I assumed I knew him. And that assumption almost cost me everything. The woman sitting in the passenger seat had been quiet the whole time, just watching, observing, waiting. Then suddenly, she spoke. Her voice was softer than the man's, gentle, almost sweet. "Come here. Come greet Auntie." And me? I didn't hesitate. Why would I? In my mind, this was just another auntie, another familiar face I had somehow forgotten, another safe adult. So I walked around the car, from the driver's side to the passenger's side. And something about that moment, if I slow it down in my memory, I can almost see it clearly. I was walking alone. My aunt and the maid stayed behind. And that distance, that small distance, was all they needed. I reached the window, smiling, innocent, completely unaware. I stretched out my hand to greet her. And that's when everything changed. She grabbed my hand. At first, it felt normal, like a handshake. But then, she didn't let go. Her grip tightened, suddenly, aggressively. Before I could even process what was happening, she pulled my hand hard. My body jerked forward. And in that moment, confusion hit me first. Why is she pulling me? Then fear followed immediately after, because the pulling didn't stop. She was dragging me toward the window, trying to force me inside the car. And then I saw something that made my heart drop. The driver was helping her. He reached over, grabbed me too, and started pulling. At the same time, the car started moving. Besties, that moment is something I will never forget. Half of my body was already inside the car. My upper body was in. My legs were still outside. And the car was moving. That's when it hit me. These people are not my uncle and auntie. These people are trying to take me. And in that exact moment, something inside me activated. Pure survival. I screamed. Not just a normal scream. Oh, no. This was the kind of scream that comes from fear so deep, it doesn't even feel human. It was loud and sharp and desperate. The kind of scream that forces people to stop what they're doing. The kind of scream that says, something is wrong. And I didn't just scream once. I screamed again and again and again. At the same time, I started fighting, kicking, pulling, twisting my body, grabbing onto anything I could. I was small, very small, but in that moment, I felt strong. Maybe it's because I also saw them struggling, and I just knew I had a chance to fight back. And in my mind, there was only one thought repeating over and over again. I am not going with them, and they are not going to skin me alive. At that moment, half of my body was inside the car. Meanwhile, my auntie finally understood what was happening, and she started running after the car, screaming and calling for help. Her voice joined mine. Now there were two screams. And that changed everything. People started coming out of their houses, doors opening, voices rising, movement everywhere. There was so much attention and noises, so many witnesses. And that's the one thing those kidnappers didn't want. But still, they didn't let go. They kept pulling, trying to force me inside before anyone could reach us. And that's when something else happened. I remember I reached up and I scratched the driver's face. I scratched hard. I didn't even think about it. My body just reacted. And it worked. He flinched, lost focus, and for a split second, he loosened his grip. That was all I needed, because the woman alone couldn't hold me. I was fighting too hard, screaming too loudly, resisting with everything I had. And finally, she let go. And I fell, out of the car, onto the road. The impact hurt, but I didn't even feel it properly. Because the moment I hit the ground, the car sped off fast. Gone within seconds, like nothing had happened, like they hadn't almost taken a child. People tried to chase after them. Some threw stones, some shouted, but it was useless. They were already gone. And me? I stayed on the ground for a moment. I remember I was shaking so bad, breathing heavily, trying to understand what just happened. Then I ran straight into my aunt's arms. I held on to her, like she was the only safe place left in the world. Because at that moment, I didn't trust anyone. Not even the people who were trying to help. The only person I knew in that whole crowd was my auntie. So I was holding on to my aunt tightly, like if I let go, something bad would happen again. My whole body was still shaking. My heart was beating so fast. People were talking around me. Some were asking questions. Some were saying, "Pole sana," which means "so sorry" in Swahili. Others were still looking down the road, as if the car might come back. But me? I wasn't hearing much. Everything sounded far away, like I was underwater. A few minutes later, we saw someone walking toward us. And guess who it was? The maid. Walking, calm, like she went to buy airtime. My aunt was furious. "Why did you run?" And she said, "I got scared and ran away." "Scared? Ma'am, I was being kidnapped. But you ran?" Even now, when I think about it, I don't know whether to laugh or be angry. Anyway, my aunt didn't even argue further, because at that point, the priority was me. She bent down, lifted me onto her back, and started walking home. And that walk felt longer than it actually was. Every step, I was holding on to her tightly, still crying, still shaking, still scared. And in my mind, one thought kept repeating. They almost skinned me alive. When we finally reached home, everything changed again, because my father had just arrived, and the moment he saw me, he froze. I don't think I have ever seen my father look like that before. Confused, scared, panicked. Because what he saw was his child covered in blood, dress torn, bruises on her body, and crying uncontrollably. And in that moment, he didn't know what had happened. His mind probably went to the worst places. Maybe he thought I had been hit by a car. Maybe he thought something even worse had happened. And me? I was already crying. But the moment I saw my dad, I upgraded. Yes, I upgraded the crying. Besties, that cry went from level 5 to level 100. I cried like my life depended on it. Even me now, I can admit, I added extra drama. But honestly, after what I had just gone through, I deserved to cry however I wanted. My father rushed to me, picked me up immediately, holding me so tightly, like he was afraid I would disappear again. And then my mom heard the noise. She came out, still weak from giving birth, and the moment she saw me, she collapsed. Just like that. Her legs literally gave up. That moment still breaks my heart when I think about it. Because as a mother, seeing your child like that, it's a pain that cannot be explained. The house turned into chaos. My mom crying, my father shouting, people talking all at once. And in the middle of all that, my aunt started telling the story. Every detail, from the car, to the pulling, to the scream, to the fall. And as she was speaking, I could see my father changing. His face, his eyes, his whole energy. He was getting angrier and angrier. The kind of anger that comes from fear, because he realized he almost lost his child. Immediately after, he started making calls, talking to people, trying to find that car. That car was never found, unfortunately, and this whole situation gave my dad nightmares. But before all that, he dealt with someone else. The maid. Let me just say this. That maid's job ended that same evening. No warning, no meeting, no let's discuss. My father looked at her and said, "Pack your things." That was it. She tried to explain, tried to say she was scared. But honestly, there are some situations where fear is not an excuse, and this was one of them. A taxi was called, her bags were packed, and she was sent away. After that, I was taken to the hospital. Thankfully, my injuries were not serious, just bruises and scratches. But emotionally, that was a different story. Because after that day, something inside me changed. I was no longer the same child. The child who trusted everyone, gone. The child who believed every smiling adult was safe, gone. Fear replaced innocence. And my parents? Oh, they became extra strict. Before, we were already not allowed outside much. But after that, it became official. We were now fully indoor children. No playing outside, no walking anywhere alone, no unnecessary movements. School? You are escorted. Church? You are escorted. Hospital? Escorted. Even breathing outside required supervision. And honestly, I understood why. Because that day showed us something very real. Danger does not always look dangerous. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it greets you politely. Sometimes it calls you closer. And if you don't know better, you walk right into it. Even now, as I sit here and tell this story, I still think about that moment. What if I didn't scream? What if I didn't fight? What if I froze? Would I still be here? Would my story be different? Would I even have a story to tell? Sometimes, the smallest actions save your life. For me, it was my voice. My scream saved me. And my God, of course, his angel worked extra shift that day. So, besties, let me ask you something. Have you ever experienced something like this? A moment where you felt like if things went just slightly differently, your life would have changed forever? Or maybe you also had a close call, something you've never shared before. If you feel comfortable, share your story in the comments. Let's talk. Let's connect. Let's remind each other that we are not alone. And most importantly, let's learn from each other. Because these conversations, they matter. If you want more real-life stories like this, stories that are shocking, emotional, sometimes funny, but always real, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Dear Diary, It Gets Worse. Because trust me, it really did get worse before it got better. Till next Saturday, besties. Bye!